want to avoid biennial bearing, where your fruit trees only fruit every other year, and having very small fruits, then you might want to watch this video, because this is all about how to avoid those two problems. You may not realise, but winter pruning for fruit trees is not a good idea. If you're growing stone fruits like plums, cherries, damsons, greengages, you can't prune them in the winter because of canker and silverleaf and fungal problems later on, bacterial problems. So you've really got to avoid that and focus on summer pruning then. With other fruit trees, if you prune in the winter, you tend to generate lots of water shoots, which are these vertical shoots, which then need pruned again in the summer. And it makes the tree very dominated by auxin as well, which tends to cause problems. It tends to make the tree cytokinin deficient. It therefore then starts to come into conflict, and we get problems with fruit size and, of course, biennial bearing. So it's very important to concentrate your growth in the right place at the right time, and that's what we're going to look at next. Quince tree, which we can prune in the winter if we need to, you can see there are a lot of crossing branches, and that causes problems. So for example, these two branches have been knocking together, and that eventually can cause damage and let some fungus in. It also cuts down the light. We're maximising the photosynthetic efficiency of a tree by careful formative pruning, and that means I've got to make a decision. I've got to cut one of these branches out to allow the other one to grow. But every cut I make will have an effect. It affects how the roots react, and it affects how the stems react. And we have to consider the fact that it's starting to have blossom. So we don't want to remove too much, because we'll lose all these lovely tip-bearing fruits that are going to start forming along this branch this year. So anything we cut off, really, we want to minimise the amount of blossom we lose. Otherwise, we're cutting off our fruit. So crossing branches have got to go. And if we had disease on the tree and we don't, we'd have to cut that off as well. So what I'm going to have to do is cut off this branch to make sure I keep the shape. And the shape that we use here is a narrow canopy shape. And it's very important that we keep this narrow canopy cylinder, because it maximises the amount of light that the tree gets. The best fruits always form on the outside. They don't form in the middle. A lot of people go for an open-centred bush tree. There was an old adage that said you should prune your trees on the shortest day, and you always knew if you pruned them correctly because you could throw your hat through them. We don't use that system here. We use this narrow cylinder, and we make sure that we minimise the amount of shading that's caused by other branches or other trees, and maximise the amount of leaf that's exposed to the sun, particularly the leaves that are around the fruits, because it's the leaves on the spurs that tend to generate the most quality of fruit.